Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know, from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars. Topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Welcome into the GSMC Basketball Podcast, right here on the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Brice Lewis. And obviously we have more NBA news for you today, as there's a lot of things that have happened between the last time and this time that I'm going to talk to you guys about today. Obviously we're going to get into the schedule release, as they've already released their TV schedule for all the games. Then, also, they're going to get into just different news and notes around the league, different things, insiders talking about the NBA restart, Vince Carter officially retiring, and other basketball news, and everything basically that happens around the association. So clearly, a lot is going on. A lot is happening. So we'll have to see how it all goes. We'll have to see how it all works out. But that's the journey we're going to go on today, and everything surrounding the NBA as we're getting even closer to the restart of the league, and we're going to actually have some live playing games again within 1 month. But we're going to get into the NBA's national television schedule release. We're going to talk about everything from the schedule release. We're going to talk about notable games, everything as such, as we're breaking down everything that's happening, especially opening day basketball, as it looks like a pretty good slate of games coming back. Obviously, the NBA is preparing for the return on July 30th, and they've went ahead and released the schedule for the remainder of the season. Obviously, the league will return with 8 preceding games per team, beginning with a doubleheader, which first is the Utah Jazz versus the New Orleans Pelicans at 6:30 p.m. on TNT. And then the back end is the Battle of Los Angeles Game 4. The Clippers and the Lakers starting off opening day after the restart, going at each other. So that's going to be a highly intense game. Very interesting. They're starting with this game right off the bat. But I mean, they had one more meeting left, and I'm sure they were just like, let's go ahead and bring the season back with a boom and start with these two powerhouses in the Western Conference. So, obviously, as you know, the NBA's board of directors approved this restart plan on June 4th of 22 teams. And, the National Basketball Players Association voted as well to approve this as well. So both sides agreed on this deal. Obviously, even after they approved this deal, they held negotiations trying to figure out different rules, kinks, and everything. I'm sure they even maybe had even slightly input into what happened with the schedule release. Then obviously we know a lot of stuff's happened during this time period as well, since the restart was officially announced, with everything happening in the world and social unrest happening across the United States, which has caused players not to want to appear or come back to the NBA. Because of that, obviously we know a player, Avery Bradley, he said he wasn't going to return. He's one of the guys. Barton said, you know what, I'm not going to risk my free agency to come back. I'm not going to return. So there's players, Trevor Ariza as well, all having different reasons of not returning. Obviously, this led to a players' coalition from Kyrie Irving, who was already out with an injury, so was not going to return anyway, but was also denied by the league when asked could he come support his teammates in Orlando. And Avery Bradley as well. So, obviously, that's something that has been a big part of this process moving forward and moving on. Obviously, since Silver knew that players might not return, and he even said this is almost like a sacrifice to return, he allowed players to be able to sit out, and as a provision. And so they wouldn't be in breach of their contracts as well, so their contracts will still count, and they could still go to free agency at the end of the season, even though they didn't maybe play at the remainder of the season because of what's going on. This was a statement that Adam Silver said to ESPN's Mike Greenberg on CBS Sports about that. And I quote, we are trying to find a way, our own way, normal way, in the middle of a pandemic, in the middle of essentially a recession, or worse, with 40 million unemployed. And now with enormous social unrest in the country. So as we work through these issues, I can understand how some players may feel like it's not for them. And like you said, it could be for a host of reasons. And like you said, it could be for even family reasons. It may be for health reasons. They have, or it may be they feel, as some players have said very recently, that their time is best spent elsewhere. Obviously, since this is under the play format, we know it's 8 teams in each conference. Still the traditional playoff format, even though there was discussions about switching up, maybe just doing a best 16 teams total. But obviously a lot of people feel like a hidden agenda behind this restart was to give the Pelicans a chance to get into the playoffs, so they could go against LeBron James in the first round and get Zion as a money mover and a stick ratings mover in the league. Obviously, the rest of these regular season games will serve as just seeding games that will finalize matchups for the postseason. The top 7 seeds are assured a spot, but the 8th seed could be determined by a play-in tournament if the 9th seed is 4 games fewer back in the standings by the end of the season. So you're technically, if anything, battling for the 9th seed. And in Washington's case, since they're 5.5 games behind, they're just trying to get to 4 games so they can have a chance to have a play-in game to get into the playoffs as well. So that's going to be very interesting. But to talk about some notable games that are happening, is all of these games are going to be played. We're only going to talk about the national games that stand out to me, not the regional. We're just going to talk about the national. Obviously, I told you opening night, it'll be Utah and the Pelicans at 6:30 on TNT. And then it'll be the Clippers and the Lakers at 9 p.m. on TNT. So that's obviously a great start. Then the next day, we have a big Eastern Conference matchup between the Boston Celtics and the Milwaukee Bucks on ESPN at 6:30. We have the Houston Rockets versus the Dallas Mavericks, a potential playoff first-round matchup, depending on seeding, at 9 o'clock on ESPN. Then we have the Pelicans on August 1st going against the Clippers at 6 p.m. on ESPN. Obviously, that's going to be a big game. And the Lakers versus Toronto Raptors at 8:30 on ESPN. And then we have the Boston Celtics and Miami Heat. If you remember, last time they played, it was a great game. Obviously looking to redeem some of that magic here at 6:30 on TNT. And then you have Houston and Portland Trailblazers at 9 p.m. on TNT on August 4th. You have the Brooklyn Nets versus the Boston Celtics. Obviously, one team that people feel like definitely does not deserve to be here is the Brooklyn Nets, because they don't have either of their best players. So a lot of people feel like this is kind of a waste. Now, if they start losing out, then obviously, some replacements can happen in the seeding, but we'll have to see. Because if they drop to the 8th seed, I think that would give Washington a much better chance, potentially, to get into the playoffs. And those are just a couple of the national televised games that they have. Obviously, I'm not going to go through all of them. There's a lot. And also, if you want to watch regional games, even if, let's say I'm living in Atlanta, so obviously the Hawks aren't playing, but I believe they'll still play a game that's close regionally to us on our sports network channels, so we could still watch a game. But it looks like they're planning on having a national televised game every day. So you'll be able to have basketball in some complexity on TV. You just have to keep up with the schedule for that particular day. So obviously that's going to be something that will again be looked at and just looked upon when trying to figure out what is going to actually end up happening. So also, there is some news coming out of the NBA. Obviously, a lot of players that are returning their COVID tests. And there was a report that 16 of 302 NBA players have tested positive for COVID-19. A couple of players that we know that were tested positive is Joker and Michael Brogdon. They've tested positive for it. Obviously, the NBA and the NBA Basketball Players Association issued a joint statement that includes, and I quote, "Any player who tested positive will remain in self-isolation until he satisfies public health protocols for discontinuing isolation and has been cleared by a physician." Obviously, we knew coming back, there's a chance that obviously, or a very strong possibility, somebody was going to have COVID. And so, obviously, and when you're asymptomatic, which a lot of athletes are, you won't ever know when to get tested. So that's why these tests happen. Because it's the asymptomatic people that can cause the most trouble in these situations because they don't know that they're sick. They don't maybe have a sign that they're sick. And so you're not, as a person, you're not going to randomly just get tested and you feel fine. But obviously, again, they have the bubble environment that they're doing. And Adam Silver talked to Ben Gover of the Washington Post regarding that and talking about what will happen here as going into about what will have to happen coming back into the season. He said, "It will entail enormous sacrifice on behalf of players and for everyone involved. The coaches and referees, listen, it's not an ideal situation. We're trying to find a way to our normal in the middle of a pandemic, in a recession, or worse, with 40 million unemployed and now with enormous social unrest in the country. As we work through these issues, I understand that for some players, this is not for them." And obviously, like I said, Wednesday players had their deadline and informed their teams they won't be coming back. But obviously, it's a 5.3% infection rate among players based on Tuesday's test, which is lower than the national figure of 6.5, is not bad. Obviously, like I said, Michael Brogdon, Jabari Parker from the Kings, and Alex Len also were included in publicly announcing their recent positive test. So obviously it happens. And obviously the biggest thing for the NBA is just to make sure that it doesn't get any worse and it doesn't get any, it doesn't spread. The biggest thing for them is the spread. Because if it spreads, Adam Silver did admit, if it does spread, we might have to think about canceling it. So I think that's why the biggest thing for them is just making sure this thing doesn't get worse. Because if it does, that's going to create issues. That's going to create problems. But we'll have to see what the NBA does as they continue to battle this crisis and they continue to battle what's going on in the association. And lastly, we're going to get into half man, half amazing Vince Carter. As Vince Carter over the weekend officially announced his retirement from the National Basketball Association. Obviously, he retired as a Hawk as they were not able to return to the season, so he went ahead and called it quits. Vince Carter is a guy who has done a lot for the NBA. He obviously, captivated us with some of the dunks that he's had, some of the plays that he's had. Never won a championship, but always tried to play the game the right way. And, he's 43 years old, played 22 seasons. His last shot was a made three-pointer against the Knicks in an overtime loss. And listen, we can talk about the accolades. He's an 8-time All-Star. He's played on He's played on a number of teams: Orlando, the Phoenix Suns, the Dallas Mavericks, the Memphis Grizzlies, the Sacramento Kings. But obviously, he'll be remembered for his seasons, where his 7 seasons in Toronto and his 5 season with the Jersey Nets, where he made to the finals with Jason Kidd and Richard Jefferson as that big three. Carter won Rookie of the Year in 1999 after being selected 5th overall in the 1998 draft out of North Carolina. He was named to an All-Star 6 of his 7 seasons in Toronto, where he averaged 23.4 points a game, 5.2 rebounds, and 3.9 assists a game while playing there. He also remained very productive with the Nets, averaging 23.6 points, 5.8 rebounds, and 4.7 assists. So, obviously he's done a lot for his career. He ranks third in the all-time regular season games played. He's 19th on the all-time scoring list, and will probably be a very highly wanted Hall of Fame candidate. A lot of people may say first ballot Hall of Famer when his time comes to enter the NBA's Hall of Fame, National Basketball Association Naismith Hall of Fame. So I just want to say I appreciate everything Vince Carter has done for us as a league. I will miss you. We'll miss all the moments you gave us. You played the game the right way, and you're a great person. So it was great seeing you on the Hawks for the last couple of years, and just appreciating and mentoring the players that you had to mentor while you were there. And like I said, all I do is hope for the best. So there you go. But coming up next, we're going to get into some more news on the NBA restart, as the NBA Insider has questions about why the league is coming back, and the NBA Players Association has finalized a plan to return. What are the details of that plan? Find out all that more right here on the podcast.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines, they got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we discussed the NBA schedule release as they released all their games, primetime games, regional games on the schedule for the NBA restart. So if you want to go check that out, you can check that out on NBA.com, Bleacher Report, any place that has NBA under their sports, and they should have the schedule that they're going to have for the season. We also discussed Vince Carter retiring after 23 seasons. Obviously having an amazing career, half man, half amazing, 8-time All-Star, a guy who's done a lot for, obviously is mainly known for what happened in Sacramento, and well, not Sacramento, but Toronto and Brooklyn. Well, it's not Brooklyn now, but the New Jersey Nets at the time. And so obviously a lot of stuff, happens. And, he had a great career, and all you can do is appreciate him for what he has done. And also we discussed 16 players testing positive out of 302 players, I believe, that were tested for COVID-19. A couple of the players include Jabari Parker, Michael Brogdon, the Joker, and Alex Len. So obviously it's not a big number, but obviously the NBA is hoping that number does not get out of control when the bubble starts, and hopefully everything goes well and goes as planned. So we have to just see how it goes. But we're going to get into some more news where we're going to talk about an NBA insider questions the league's motive to return. As he says, it's about money, clearly. And this is coming off an article from Bleacher Report on the NBA. Eric Pincus is writing this article. And we're going to go through the article, and I'm going to discuss to you and break down to you what he wrote. So, with all the focus on how and when the NBA should return, it's easy to overlook the critical question, should the NBA come back? And that's a question that has been asked by a lot of people during this process. Not just by this article, but by a lot of people. Should the NBA come back? I've seen tweets on Twitter. I've seen friends say, the more I hear, the more details I get, I start to even wonder if they should come back. So obviously that's going to be a big thing, going into the months, depending on how the success of this bubble goes. But after months of research, deliberation, and negotiation, the NBA released its return schedule Friday that Zion Williamson and the New Orleans Pelicans will tip off against the Utah Jazz on July 30th, followed by LeBron James and the Los Angeles Lakers versus Kawhi Leonard in the Los Angeles Clippers. Unfortunately, the NBA's announcement coincides with significant spikes of coronavirus cases around the country, including the state of Florida, where the rest of the season will play out. Earlier in that day, the league announced 16 of 302 players have tested positive, which is only 5.3%. We're coming back because sports matters in our society, Commissioner Adam Silver said on a conference call. They bring people together when they need it most. Emotions are high. From people tired of quarantine, frustrated they need to burrow deeper into their hemorrhage, and to those who believing society should go back to normal regardless of the consequences, add in the growing Black Lives Matter movement aspiring to facilitate significant societal changes in the response to the killing of George Floyd and several similar racial injustices, the answer grows murkier. A Western Conference executive said, "It's clearly about money. I'm just curious to see what practices they will use to get people to use if multiple people get it. At what point do they shut it down?" As I've already said, that Adam Silver has came out and said that depending on how it goes, if they do get a certain spread of cases while in the bubble, they will shut it down again. That's something that they have to take under consideration seriously. I have supreme trust in Adam. I think he is the absolute best in the business, and there will be an outbreak in the bubble. But there will be an outbreak in the bubble, one agent said. You'll see it's definitely going to happen. It will not stay contained, not when you have Disney workers coming in and out. And obviously I've reported on that before because obviously I've reported that players were concerned that, the workers that they're going to be helping the players during that time are not going to be tested. So if one of them gets it, they could be who gives the coronavirus to players and then it spreads. So obviously, that's a concern that the players and the National Basketball Association Players Association has had a concern with. That remains a widespread fear among the various corners of the NBA. The Disney cast supporting the players in Orlando and the multiple properties in Orlando won't be subjected to the same stringent testing requirements as the players. Can it be considered a bubble with external staff going in and out? Paranoia is a rational response at this point, but one expert seems impressed by the league's measures. Dr. Anthony Fauci, director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, told Stadium that the NBA's restart plan is quite creative. I think they might as well be quite successful with it, while noting that they really wanted to make sure that the safety of the players was paramount. It's on the rise in the majority of states in the United States right now, Silver acknowledged. But my ultimate conclusion is that we can't outrun the virus and that this is something we're going to be living with for the foreseeable future, which I'm sure everybody knows at this point. We will probably have this for the rest of 2020, even though that's something a lot of people don't want to hear. Saving 88 regular season games and playoffs are important to the league, but its potential failure could inform the NBA how to protect all of the 2020-2021 season. Like, a lot of people don't think about that. What happens during this time period will help the NBA get the knowledge on what they should improve and what works and what doesn't work. So when the next season comes around, they'll have implemented a new, adjusted, reflex, and revised plan to protect the players and to feel like they'll have more of a successful season when it comes. There is no reasonable expectation that a vaccine will be available and widely distributed anytime soon. I would have hoped this country could get it under control by December like every other country is managing to do, the agent said. An Eastern Conference exec laughed at the naivety for initially expecting next year to start in October in arenas full of fans. There's no way, he said after several conversations with his colleagues around the league. Next season is projected to start in next December, and it may not look that different than the Orlando experiment, especially if it's successful. So that hints that they could go back to the bubble system if it doesn't work. But obviously, I think you would have to include more locations because you can't say from December to June, we need you to be in a bubble. So I'm sure they would have to put multiple locations. And they may even have to adjust the schedule differently to fit and accommodate that. You have to at least try, the Western Conference exec said. I think Silver's acknowledging the potential downfall was wise. There was a general agreement among those polled on the upside of if the return is successful. Television and streaming ratings should be tremendous. The league can't make back revenue lost without fans in attendance, but the compromise to include 8 teams was a reasonable one. I wish all 30 teams were able to play, the Eastern Conference exec said. The NBA already made one huge mistake they can't undo. They should have just started with a 16-team playoff. The 6 other teams added to the 220 NBA personnel in 1 month of the season. To which Brooklyn Nets guard Spencer Dinwiddie responded, none of that matters. Zion needed to be in this thing, as the Pelicans were in 10th place. And they needed regular season games to satisfy as many reasonable contracts as possible. Now the playoffs can not only make up for the revenue, but they might actually profit. Keep in mind that every $2 million of lost NBA revenue, the players lose approximately $1 million collectively. It is in their best interest to play if financials are essential. Because obviously, we've talked and we've heard if they didn't come back, that the owners could pull out a clause in the CBA to rip up the CBA, and now they would have all the leverage and the players wouldn't. So the players might be in for a bad deal when coming into the next decade. Once they get to the bubble, they'll be fine. Orlando may be the safest place in the country, the Eastern Conference exec said. Though his confidence seemed residued when discussing the Disney support staff, even though that shouldn't be a problem, it only takes one mistake. Several were concerned about Orlando's site itself, using phrases like it will be a mess, but with harsher language. Once the games get going and everybody's in the groove, it will be fine, the former exec said. But the logistics, player feuds, on and off the court, the lifestyle the players are used to, team personnel access, media access, the problems could be endless. If LeBron wants to use the pool for 2 hours and only his teammates and players' friends are allowed around, how does another star get access if needed? Are the teams going to organize team dinners every night, get-togethers like summer camp? I'm really interested to see what top-notch organizations as far as management, such as the San Antonio Spurs, the Oklahoma City Thunder, the Utah Jazz, and the Boston Celtics do. That's a long time for the training camp, the Eastern Conference exec said, and at least under normal circumstances, you can do other things. I don't think the players know what they've signed up for, or at least they're starting to realize it now. The NBA has no path to protection or perfection, which everybody knows in this situation. The only solution was picking the worst option, the least worst option. The motivation may be financial. The players in the league are in agreement, at least collectively, that the best path is through Orlando. Basketball could show how we balance public health and economic necessity, plus a desire for shared experiences and something to cheer for through the months saved ahead. The first game is over a month away, for better or worse. Pro Hoops history Curtis Harris, a longtime academic whose work has focused on civil rights in America and the efforts of professional basketball players in the mid-20th century to secure their labor and civil rights, took exception with Silver's explanation. The only logical reason they're trying to restart the season amidst an uncontrolled pandemic in a state that's lit up like a Christmas tree with COVID-19 cases is because they're trying to salvage whatever money they can, Harris told Bleacher Report. I appreciate the safety measures they are planning on instituting, but we just had the highest number of recorded infections both nationally and in Florida today. Please just say the league needs the money to pay its bills. We all understand that right now, but I'm sure I'll watch some games anyway. Despite how I think it's a bad idea to restart the season, I don't feed us this cockamamie higher purpose about pro sports. That is a compelling take, but it's one of many sympathizers. Conversely, Silver view that basketball is a vehicle to help a dangerous or a damaged world, both financially and socially, is a viable perspective. There probably isn't a perfect one-size-fits-all philosophy that can make sense of our times, because obviously these times are very, timing in terms of this is not what we expected to be doing at this point in our lives ever. But one respected NBA journalist posted a personal message suggesting the NBA's return will actually have an emotional meaning beyond the money. But the tweet was met with an avalanche of negativity, prompting him to take the tweet down. The actual basketball is going to be possibly the best we've ever seen. One former Western Conference executive said, "No throwaway games, all-stars and superstars playing every game, literally game after game. That means something." A total of 22 teams will return, with 9 fighting immediately for the final 3 playoff slots, 2 in the Eastern Conference and 1 in the Western, followed by the full 16 slate teams in the 7-game series and the playoffs. This season's winner will bear an asterisk, but not as a demerit. In an immensely challenging year, the final franchise standing should deserve even a greater respect for surviving and thriving through 2019-2020. And there you go. So obviously the NBA has a lot of things on their plate. There's a lot of things riding on this next season, and how they handle next season is riding on this. How people's perception of the league, how the games are, all of it is riding on this. You know, the NBA has a big challenge ahead. Adam Silver knows this is a big challenge ahead. Players know this is a big challenge ahead. Owners know this is a big challenge ahead. This is going to be something that's going to stick. This is something that's going to be around, and we'll have to see how everything just kind of turns out when we get down to it, and they make the decisions that they need to go ahead and try to contribute to the success of the league moving forward. And hopefully there won't be a spread. Hopefully there won't be any bad concerns. And hopefully there won't be anything bad happening. I think that's going to be the most important and big thing right now. So we'll have to stay tuned and see what happens with the NBA league restart. But coming up next, we're going to get into what I talked about earlier, the NBA and the NBAPA finalizing a plan to return, and also eliminate teams plan to support use of campus to train. All that here and more right here on the GSMC Basketball Podcast.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA. From the UFC to extreme cage fighting, they got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast right here on the GSMC Podcast Network. Last segment, we discussed basically the whole segment, the NBA Insider article about an NBA insider, they have talked to people from both Eastern and Western Conference discussing why the league is coming back. Why did they make this decision? And the narratives and motives behind it. So we talked about all that and more in the last segment. Broke that down, literally took the entire segment. Obviously, it took a little longer than I expected, but listen, this is why we have other parts of the show, so we can still get into all the news and notes that I want to be able to get into with you guys and inform you guys on the latest happenings around basketball. So, I mean, listen, for the most part, obviously basketball is, doing what they're trying to do out there, and they're trying to be the best they can be to make sure the bubble works. Well, obviously, the two main groups that make this happen are the NBA and the NBAPA. Or MBPA. You see, I want to say NBA, then P, but it's MPA. National Basketball Players Association. Might as well just say it out loud than try to say it in its initials. But they have finalized a plan to restart the regular season officially now. So it seems like, I guess, they've gotten all the details and everything worked out that they've been trying to work out for a while, and they think they have it all ready to go and ready to be able to do. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But after weeks of speculation, the NBA and National Basketball Players Association has announced they have came to an agreement on a finalized plan to restart the regular season, including officially locking in a restart date. In a joint announcement, the league and players confirmed the season will resume on July 30th as that is the lockdown date. That's been the date that has been expected as the date they've talked about. In Walt Disney World Resort, Orlando, Florida, with 22 teams competing and no fans allowed in attendance. The commissioner, Adam Silver, has included a statement in his announcement, which I'll read to you right here, and I quote, "We have worked together with the Players Association to establish a restart plan that prioritizes the health and safety and preserves competitive fairness and provides a platform to address social justice issues. We are grateful to our longtime collaborator Disney for its role in playing host and making this return to play possible. We also thank the public health officials and infectious disease specialists who helped guide the creation of comprehensive medical protocol and protections." Now, obviously, this agreement that also puts the full schedule, which they released, and the national television matchups, which also was released on Friday, will, with the league and its broadcast technology partners collaborating to enhance game telecasts and bring immersive fans, immersive interactive viewing experience, which is something obviously you knew with this restart. Since there's no fans daily, the networks in the league would have to do even more to try to make the games interesting. Because listen, everybody has different things they want to see, but how can we still make games interesting? How can we still make everything interesting with no fans? And so I'm sure it'll be interesting to see what the NBA decides. It'll be interesting to see what ESPN, TNT, and all of them decide. How they want to try to put the game together to then make it marketable and watchable to the viewing audience. I think that's going to be a big thing. I think it's going to be a big deal. So I'm sure that's something that will be looked at and will be very much, just looked into. Obviously, there's been ideas that have been pitched, but we don't know yet. We don't know yet, and so we just got to keep an eye on that and see how it goes. Now, information about the NBA's return date has been reported since the Board of Governors and players voted to approve the restart plan last month. Mandatory individual workouts will begin July 1st, with teams traveling to Orlando between July 7th and 9th. The transaction window was open this past previous Tuesday, allowing teams to sign eligible free agents two-way players to bring their maximum size up to 17. And don't forget, the season won't end won't end any longer after October 13th. So that was the plan that was discussed, negotiated, and decided on. So we'll have to see how it all works out when it gets down to it. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to look into a lot of different things. So we're just going to have to see how it all works to me. NBA has a lot of things to try to figure out. And I'm sure they're going to try to do anything they possibly can to figure it out, get it done, do it right, and do it the right way. So we'll just have to see how it looks. But also we have another story to get into. Now, the teams that aren't returning for the season have been reported previously. They still want the ability to be able to practice and train with their team to still give them some type of work, so it's not like they haven't played organized basketball in any way since March, when the season comes back in December for them. So, eliminated NBA teams significantly support secondary campus to train. So basically, another location for all the teams that didn't play to go and train, even have scrimmage games, etc., to give them the opportunity to still have some game time and some live playing time and not seem like they're just coming off out of the blue trying to play the game. And I'll read this article to you guys. The majority of the 8 NBA teams that didn't qualify for the league's restart reportedly have significant support for the idea of a second campus training and televised games. Sam Amick of The Athletic reported Friday, a final decision likely won't be made until the 2019-2020 season resumes at the Disney World Complex in Orlando, Florida. Those games, featuring 22 of the 30 NBA organizations, are tentatively scheduled to tip off July 3rd. Now, the teams, obviously, that didn't make it were the Atlanta Hawks, Charlotte Hornets, Chicago Bulls, Cleveland Cavaliers, Detroit Pistons, Golden State Warriors, Minnesota Timberwolves, New York Knicks. As well as those are the 8 teams that won't take part. Atlanta, Cleveland, and Detroit have been the most vocal teams out of all the teams trying to set up a return to play for the remaining teams. Well, league officials mentioned Las Vegas and Houston as possible hosts for a secondary campus. The Knicks were less certain in their participation should the idea receive the green light, since their roster features several potential free agents who may opt out of such a plan. Because remember, if you remember what the Knicks did before the season, they signed a lot of guys to a lot of one-year deals. And with them not making the playoffs, they may feel like, well, what's the point of us going to play in this potential training if I'm not even going to be with you guys when free agency starts? Because a lot of these players might leave. So for them, they may not see the same value in going into that. So I can understand from the Knicks' perspective why they're hesitant to make such a move. The National Basketball Players Association Executive Director Michelle Roberts told The Athletic she wasn't sure whether another campus would be plausible amid the coronavirus pandemic. And I quote a statement she made, "But I am very concerned, and frankly, my concern aside, our players and our teams are very concerned about any, in terms of play, that doesn't have the same guarantees of safety and health that we provided for the teams in Orlando." So yeah, never say never, but there's a standard that has to be reached. If a plan isn't formulated, it would created an extended layoff for those teams. The 2019-2020 season was hosted on March 11th because of the pandemic and isn't scheduled to start until December 1st. So obviously, that's what's going on there. Hopefully, the teams can get what they're looking for here, because I'm sure that's what they would prefer. They feel like that would be what's best for them moving forward, and try to, you know, like I said, try to get some live game time. Because remember, the Atlanta Hawks, Lloyd Poyer said, I have a lot of young guys on my team who need experience, who need to play. And them not being able to resume in the season won't help them. So they're looking at how can we just still get our players a chance to play, still get our players a chance to go out there and compete. And also, other news. Trae Young and Anthony Edwards have both signed with Clutch Sports. As obviously this is a big move for both players. Is obviously Anthony Edwards, someone who a lot of people are projecting to be the first overall draft pick in this year's NBA draft, signs with what people call LeBron's agency, even though his friend runs it and is his agency. And obviously Trae Young. Obviously, one thing about the top agencies like Clutch Sports and Jay-Z's brand and other top guys is that when you're a superstar player, especially like Trae is, or he's getting to that status, teams sometimes worry for teams. Usually small market teams worry. Obviously, they're all about getting them to the big city, getting the most money, maximizing their market potential. Now, the unique thing about Atlanta is a pretty big city, so it's not like Trae couldn't become a big star here. It's not like he's playing in a Milwaukee or maybe a New Orleans or, one of those teams. He's playing in Atlanta. But we still have to see what maybe, Clutch Sports and the agency tells them. I'm sure they're like, listen, you can get big in Atlanta. It's just if Atlanta doesn't start winning, I'm sure Clutch will be in his ear saying, hey, if they ain't winning, you might need to get out of there. And so obviously that's why I think a lot of teams sometimes worry about when a star player switches agents to like one of the big corporations like Clutch Sports, because they're all about getting the most money and the most, maximized publicity for their players underneath their leadership. So I'm sure there was an article released saying, should the Hawks be worried? I don't think they should be worried. I think, listen, if you can get a winning season or make the playoffs next year with Trae Young, I think everything will be fine. I think he'll sign a contract extension because we're going to give him the max. Now, the only time I feel like it would become an issue would be that second contract if we don't start making real results. I think that's where you might see Trae being like, okay, I might have to leave if we're not sustaining success here. So obviously that's something that the Atlanta Hawks have to look into, because they have some big free agent decisions coming up in their franchise. Obviously, the biggest one right now to everybody is John Collins. their young power forward, averaging 20 and 10 a game. Should they resign him? Some people are saying they're not wanting to because he's not the best defender. But at the same time, I've always argued that point. Well, who else is going to give you 20 and 10 on the Hawks? Unless you think Cam Reddish can become a superstar or a star that you think he has the potential to have, that might not be in your best interest to allow a guy like him to walk out of your organization like that. Because honestly, Trey knows he's our second best player, and letting our second best player walk is a big risk. So we'll have to see what happens. But then, in other news, the NBA is prepared for a wave of positive tests. Now, obviously, they had 16 tests, but they're also prepared for the fact that during the bubble, there could be some tests in there, and they have to be prepared to handle those tests. Basically, just saying we have looked at every precaution, we've looked at every little thing, and we're trying to be ready for anything that potentially could pop out and cause an issue within the circle. Because I'm sure they're trying to do anything they can to make sure they stay on top of everything so nobody gets hurt, no more people don't get injured, maybe more people don't get sick, and just making sure, like, hey, coaches, personnel, staff, training, all of them are good. It's just a big matter of making sure everybody's on top of everything. So I think that's going to be the big thing to look at there. So we're going to have to see how it all ends up and how it all turns out. Obviously, if you haven't heard, Spencer Dinwiddie also has COVID-19. So I guess, it's not technically breaking during the podcast, but some new information while we're doing this. And so obviously, and he's unsure if he's going to even go to Orlando now because he has COVID. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with basically, I guess you could say, the Nets' current best player that's actively playing as he's gotten COVID-19. So we're going to have to see how all of it works out with him. But coming up next, we have more basketball news I'm going to get to. So if you want to stick tuned for that, we're going to talk about a lot of different things. Stay tuned right here to the podcast.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we broke down a few stories, actually. We broke down a couple of things we talked about here on the podcast. We discussed the NBA and NBA PA finalized plan to return. Obviously, they went ahead and agreed on dates, scheduling, all of that. So it looks like they have now their plan officially agreed to in place. So now they can go ahead and do that and continue on with the season. Also, the eliminated teams are wanting support and gaining traction to use another campus, a secondary campus, to help train, do televised games, scrimmage games, and train with their teams so they can still get some type of play, even though they're not included in the restart, to help stay not rusty, just to help get some time to play. Obviously, you got young teams and everything like that trying to get their guys still in there. And then also, Trae Young, Anthony Edwards signing with Clutch Sports. Obviously, Anthony Edwards coming in potentially could be the first overall draft pick. Obviously, that means a lot. If Clutch Sports is going after a guy like him, they must see him as a star potentially in the league in the future. And then Trae Young, a guy who's become a star. Obviously, his contract's going to be up in a couple of years with the Atlanta Hawks. Some people are wondering, could this mean something? I don't think it does, but we'll have to see. As Clutch Sports is all about trying to get the best for their players at all times. And also, the NBA is prepared for a wave of positive tests just in case anything happens more out of this initial 16 out of 302 that they've had. Just in case a wave comes, they're ready and they're prepared to handle it and deal with it accordingly. Now we're going to get into some news. The NBA reportedly plans to paint Black Lives Matter on courts in Orlando arenas. This is obviously by ESPN. As they have they're going to use the platform to help spread and still talk about the awareness of what's happening in the social injustice and social unrest in society today. As they should. I mean, why wouldn't they? That's a smart thing to do on their part. But the NBA will paint Black Lives Matter on all 3 courts it will use when it resumes the 2019-2020 season at Walt Disney World Resort in Orlando, Florida. The phrase reportedly would be featured inside both sidelines. So this would be on the sidelines, probably on the players. I would think maybe not the player benches, but like right in front of the scorer's table. Lowe and Shelburne of ESPN is also reporting that the WNBA is considering a similar nod to the Black Lives Matter movement when it reopened this 2020 season at IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida. Oklahoma City star Chris Paul, CP3, who also is the president of the National Basketball Players Association, told Undefeated's Mark Spears the union was working with the league to have players wear personalized social justice and social cause charities messages on the back of their jerseys, as they also agreed to allow players to customize their jerseys to help send a message in whatever the way they would like. So obviously, as you can tell, the NBA is definitely trying to allow the expression and the freedom of expression of what's going on into the games, as that's something that they want to be able to definitely stay on top of, just in case people think they're not going to bring attention to that. Las Vegas Aces star Angel McCoughtry first brought up the idea of sharing a photo of her number 35 jersey with Breonna Taylor featured on the back. Obviously, if you don't know about that story, Louisiana police shot and killed Taylor in her apartment on March 13th while conducting a search warrant. Officers said they knocked on Taylor's door prior to entering, but her family has disputed that was that narrative in a wrongful death lawsuit. Lowe and Sherburne reported WNBA players have also proposed wearing shooting shirts bearing the slogan "Say Her Name," alluding to Taylor and other women who were victims of police brutality. The killings of Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and Ahmaud Arbery have sparked ongoing protests nationwide. Demonstrators have demanded meaningful reforms addressing police brutality, systematic racism, and racial inequality. The NBA announced June 4th its board of directors approved a plan to restart the current season in Orlando. However, some players question if this was the right move that could divert attention from the movement for social justice, which obviously you've heard Dwight Howard bring statements out. Kyrie has been against it. Avery Bradley has made statements, and the player coalition was formed to also talk about it. So obviously, like they said, there has been backlash. It hasn't always been the most positive when it's come to it all the time. So obviously that's something to stay on top of. ESPN's Malika Andrews and Adrian Wojnarowski obviously spoke with Lakers guard Avery Bradley, who obviously we know about his statement and what he wanted with a coalition of players, as he wanted to see the NBA lay out more concrete steps to increase the level of diversity in the coaching and front office ranks. Another focus was also having the league set up official partnerships with black-owned businesses and venues, obviously trying to see an impact in a positive way for the black community. And so obviously that was the article. And so obviously, as you can tell, listen, I think this is a great idea. I think this is an excellent idea, especially with everything that's going on in the world, for the league to go ahead and still paint Black Lives Matter, allow players to customize their jerseys to talk about the social injustice. And there may be even more. They'll probably have little packages and presentations. I'm sure they're going to have that on their podcast. And so obviously, listen, if you're someone who looks at that, I understand people want to use basketball to get away from it, but at the same time, it's something you'll never be able to get away from, because it's something in your life. It's something that will continue to affect you, and it will never, be over or get away from it. So obviously, we'll have to see. We'll have to see how it turns out, and the NBA, like I said, and I've said it multiple times in this podcast, has done a great job with how they've handled this situation, how they've stayed behind their players, they've supported their players, and they're not hesitant to say, the commissioner's not hesitant to say, the owners aren't hesitant to say, we support you and we have your back through all the racial injustice that is going on in the world today. And that's something you have to appreciate about the NBA, why their league is being really crystal league, the diamond league right now that every league should be looking at in terms of how to handle a situation like the pandemic and social injustice that is happening in the world at this moment. Other news, J.R. Smith is going to be an L.A. Laker. He is expected to sign a contract, obviously, with Avery Bradley losing. They needed somebody to fill his spot. J.R. Smith has been connected to the Los Angeles Lakers for a while. He's played with LeBron in Cleveland. And obviously, the veteran guard is now going to sign a deal for the rest of the season with them. Obviously, they're expected to finalize the contract before Tuesday's closure of the transition window. So now that will be the new teammate of LeBron James, but an old teammate as well, as he's played with him before. The Cleveland Cavaliers, if you forget, waived I'm about to say Josh Smith, J.R. Smith, last July after he spent the past 5 seasons with the team, obviously, basically with LeBron the whole time. It became a real possibility that the 34-year-old would catch on with the team when the NBA announced its roster expansion from 15 to 17 as part of the NBA's return to play plan in Orlando, Florida, following the league's 4-month shutdown because of the coronavirus pandemic. In 2018-2019, he averaged 6.7 points, 1.6 rebounds, and 1.9 assists in just 11 games, as obviously that was the last game he appeared in before the Cavs just went ahead and deactivated him when they really got rid of a lot of guys that was with LeBron previously in that season. The previous season, though, where he appeared in 80 games and made 61 starts, he only averaged 8 points a game, 2.9 rebounds, and 1.8 assists while shooting 40% from the field and 37.5 from the three-point range. During his time in Cleveland, obviously, JR played in 4 NBA Finals and was part of the only championship-winning team in franchise history. While Smith obviously has his deficiencies that you have to deal with, he is a dangerous shooter who can take over games from behind the arc when he hits his stride. He's hit threes at a solid 37.3% rate for his career, and he's 8th on the active career list with over 1,900 three-point field goals made. Obviously, again, Smith no longer fit into the plans with Cleveland, who was rebuilding and utilizing younger players, but it was clear he would be of interest to many teams across the league because of his 3-and-D potential. He is best used as an offensive catalyst off the bench, which is a role he has thrived in various points of his career. And if J.R. Smith can knock down those shots, he can definitely help spread the floor for LeBron. Obviously, we know LeBron's strength is he's an excellent passer, and just having a shooter who can shoot, obviously, will do nothing but help the situation. Obviously, since JR now will be reunited with LeBron James, they have that veteran experience and they have played together. So obviously, that in terms of chemistry with them two will not be an issue whatsoever. So we'll have to see how it all again works out. I think JR is a good addition to the team. I think he brings them, like I said, that shooter that they were looking for, and they should be in good position to continue to be effective moving forward. So, we'll have to really see how everything goes and plays out, I think. As it should be. Because, listen, the Lakers, again, they need to replace Avery Bradley. We'll see how the loss of Avery Bradley affects them. But so far, we're just going to continue to look into it and hope for the best. Like I said, moving on forward with the season. So we have to see. But also, we're going to get to this last story before we go. Obviously, if you remember back when LeBron left Cleveland in 2010, there were many teams involved in trying to get him. And there was a story that came out on the New York Knicks, as apparently the Knicks were actually LeBron's first choice. But the meeting was a disaster, and LeBron basically never gave them that second meeting, and obviously we saw what happened when he went to Miami. Obviously, LeBron James' interest, obviously, from that perspective, spanned over a decade in the Knicks. In 2010, the Knicks had their best chance to acquire him. They were flush with cap space after tanking for the express purpose of signing James and other high-profile free agents of July. Unfortunately for the Knicks, that summer will forever go down as one of the biggest disappointments in franchise history after bungling their meeting with LeBron James, despite being considered favorites in league circles. From someone who said, Bill Simmons said on his podcast on The Ringer, from everybody I've talked to in the know since then, it was clear the Knicks were his first choice. It was basically the Knicks to lose, and they couldn't stay out of their own way. The stories are legendary. The meeting, which Simmons described as a disaster, went so poorly that LeBron did not grant the Knicks a second chance to sit down before signing with the Miami Heat. While the Knicks went in all on glitz in their presentation, even hiring James Gafandi and Eddie Falco to reprise the roles as Tony and Carmelo Serrano in their pitch was completely lacking the long-term vision on the court. Dolan was being Dolan. They didn't have anything prepared. It just couldn't have gone worse by all accounts. It was a disaster. I think at that point, combined with the decade the Knicks just had, I think those guys just said, screw it. The Knicks had around $34 million in cap space heading into the summer of 2010, which would have been enough to land 2 max free agents with a little maneuvering. Adding the third piece to the big three would have required a sign and trade, but the Knicks had promising young players like Danilo Gallinari, Wilson Chandler, and Timothy Mozgov, who could have been enticing to rebuilding teams in Toronto and Cleveland. Ultimately, the Knicks' failure falls on Knicks management, which has been one among the worst in the NBA for most of the 21st century. The Knicks scrambled to overpay Amari Stoudemire despite his names not being covered by insurance, and then jettisoned their young talent for Carmelo Anthony in 2011, who at the time was just months away from being an unrestricted free agent. So, there you go. So, that's basically it. I mean, listen, I've discussed and been hard on the Knicks on this podcast before. The Knicks have not been that great. The Knicks have struggled to basically be relevant from an office perspective. You had a chance to get one of the best free agents and you couldn't. Dolan is just not organized. He doesn't know how to run the franchise, in my opinion. I think a lot of Knicks fans would agree with that as well. Because the thing about me is it's not me slandering Dolan isn't like, oh, I'm going out on a limb. This is a very widely felt thing by a lot of people in the league, by a lot of fans. I mean, just knowing all the disappointments they've had under him is just, it just makes you think the Knicks have such potential because their brand is big, but the brand is becoming more and more worthless by the year because they keep not winning, they keep being irrelevant. And listen, since they're the Knicks, they're going to get segments on people's shows. But the thing is, you don't want every single segment every year to be about how bad you are. So obviously this is just another example of the mistakes that have been made, obviously losing it to a guy, losing LeBron, who could have signed and then brought somebody with him, and we don't know what the Knicks would have became. And obviously, you know them, when they make a mistake or lose out on something, they continue to make even more mistakes on top of that. So there you go. But thank you for tuning into the GSMC Basketball Podcast on the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Brice Lewis. Don't forget to follow us on social media and also listen to our other amazing podcasts on the GSMC Podcast Network. So everybody just go out there, stay safe, wear your mask, and have a good day.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.